At exactly 7:42 a.m. local time on July 12, 2025, three Chinese Y-20 transport aircraft entered international airspace near Guam, disguised as harmless civilian cargo planes. To U.S. radar and satellite systems, they appeared completely routine, broadcasting standard civilian transponder codes and flying along expected air corridors. What American forces didn't know was that for the previous 31 minutes, those aircraft had been silently deploying dozens of stealth drones into the sky. Coated in radar-absorbing materials and shaped like manta rays, these drones were nearly invisible to conventional detection systems. Their mission was clear: map every radar signature, electronic emission, and formation pattern of the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group below. Simultaneously, flying low over the ocean, four Chinese H-6K bombers released modified buoys equipped with powerful electronic warfare pods. These pods began emitting intense jamming signals across the electromagnetic spectrum, creating a 60-mile radius of electronic blindness. U.S. radar screens turned static. Communications faltered. The Chinese were not launching a traditional attack. They were setting the stage for a high-tech ambush designed to paralyze American awareness before the real strike began. Clear skies and calm waters gave no warning. It was the quiet before a storm the world had never seen. With the U.S. fleet blinded and distracted by heavy electronic interference, the real attack began. 16 Chinese J-16 fighter jets descended from medium altitude, flying beneath the radar horizon concealed by the jamming cloud. Each aircraft launched YJ-91 anti-radiation missiles, specifically targeting the outer air defense radars and missile guidance systems of the U.S. strike group. These missiles weren't random. They were calibrated to strike the fleet's eyes and ears before it could fully react. At the same time, the stealth drones previously released from the Y-20 aircraft began diving from high altitude. Gliding silently through the atmosphere, they approached in tight, coordinated formations, aiming to confuse and overwhelm the U.S. missile tracking systems. From below, sea-skimming missiles followed, flying just meters above the ocean surface, creating a vertical pincer attack, an assault from above and below in perfect synchronization. This wasn't an ordinary air raid. It was a meticulously planned, multi-domain saturation strike, combining stealth, electronic warfare, speed, and psychological confusion. In just 210 seconds, the calm morning patrol turned into one of the most technologically complex and aggressive naval ambushes in modern history. The Chinese weren't just attacking, they were testing the limits of American defense coordination under maximum pressure. Despite the surprise and intensity of the attack, the U.S. fleet reacted with remarkable speed and precision. Aboard the USS Princeton, the Aegis combat system immediately shifted to full combat readiness, its consoles lighting up like a war room under DEFCON 1. Although Chinese jamming blanketed the electromagnetic spectrum, U.S. forces had prepared for such a scenario. Airborne E-2D Hawkeye early warning aircraft, already in patrol rotation, switched to low-frequency radar modes specifically designed to penetrate electronic interference. Within seconds, they detected incoming threats. Using the Cooperative Engagement Capability (CE) network, data from the Hawkeyes was instantly transmitted across all ships in the carrier strike group. This network integration allowed each vessel's fire control systems to automatically lock on to targets without delay. The outer defense perimeter roared to life. From the USS Chancellorsville, 8 SM-6 interceptors launched vertically, soaring into the sky before locking onto the Chinese missiles. At the same time, Cram and Phalanx Seidleu's gun systems activated, tracking low-flying drones with lightning speed. In the skies above, FA-18 Super Hornets already on patrol received targeting data through encrypted links and charged into the drone swarm. Within moments, the U.S. defense web was fully engaged, tight, layered, and deadly accurate. For nearly 4 minutes, the skies above the Philippine Sea erupted into chaos as missiles streaked through the air. Drones zigzagged at low altitude, and electronic warfare flooded every frequency. Yet amid this storm, the U.S. carrier strike group held firm. The layered American defense system, combining sea-based interceptors, air superiority fighters, and close-in weapon systems, performed exactly as designed. SM-6 missiles intercepted the majority of incoming threats at long range. Phalanxes and Cram gun systems shredded low-flying drones as they approached ship perimeters. Meanwhile, FA-18 Super Hornets tore through the drone cloud, launching AIM-120 AMRAAMs with pinpoint precision. The USS Gerald R. Ford's Combat Center activated full battle readiness. Blast doors were sealed. Damage control teams stood by. But the enemy never reached the heart of the fleet. Only one missile managed to breach the defensive wall, striking the USS Chancellorsville and damaging its radar mast. All other threats were neutralized before impact. This wasn't a lucky escape. It was the result of years of planning, investment, and training. Despite the Chinese effort to confuse and overwhelm with stealth, saturation, and jamming, the American systems communicated, adapted, and executed perfectly. The ambush had failed. The line didn't break. It held, under fire and under pressure. At exactly 8:11 a.m., just 29 minutes after the first Chinese stealth drone crossed the horizon, the U.S. Carrier Strike Group shifted from defense to retaliation. Inside the Combat Direction Center of the USS Gerald R. Ford, a red light pulsed over the operations map. Strike authorization had been granted by Washington. This wasn't a delayed counterattack. It was a coordinated, multi-domain retaliation that had been rehearsed for years. Within minutes, 24 F-35C Lightning II jets launched from the Ford's electromagnetic catapults. Their departures were near silent, their formations razor-sharp. Flying low to evade radar, they split into 3 squadrons: air dominance, deep strike, and jamming escort. Moments later, F-A-18 Super Hornets followed, armed with long-range AGM-158 JASSM-ER cruise missiles capable of hitting fortified targets from 500 miles away. But the aerial response was only the beginning. 80 nautical miles east, the USS Zumwalt brought its experimental railguns online. With a thunderous launch, it fired tungsten projectiles at hypersonic speeds, over Mach 7, toward Chinese radar stations on Hainan Island. No warheads were needed. Kinetic impact alone was devastating. The message was clear: the United States had not only survived the ambush, it was striking back with overwhelming force, precision, and unmatched technological power. As American jets soared into the sky, the full weight of U.S. military power unfolded across every domain. High above the Pacific, 6 MQ-9 Reaper drones loitered at 45,000 feet, scanning Chinese territory for radar signatures, mobile launchers, and command centers. Their live data streams fed directly into satellite networks and F-35C cockpit displays, creating a synchronized battlefield picture in real time. At sea, 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers launched a combined salvo of 28 Tomahawk Block V cruise missiles. Each missile twisted in midair and dropped into sea-skimming mode, using DSMAC, Digital Scene Matching Area Correlation guidance, to navigate with photographic memory of the terrain. These weapons weren't simply launched. They were programmed to fly low, invisible to radar, and strike with near-perfect accuracy from over 1,000 miles away. Simultaneously, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare jets jammed Chinese military communications, while P-8A Poseidon patrol aircraft locked in on enemy submarines attempting to surface. It was a meticulously layered response: stealth fighters, cruise missiles, hypersonic railgun strikes, ISR drones, and electromagnetic warfare, all synchronized to deny China time to coordinate a defense. This was not a simple counterstrike. It was a demonstration of total integration. Every element of American power operated in harmony, shifting seamlessly from defense to domination. By 9:07 a.m., the full scale of damage inflicted on China was becoming clear. The first Tomahawk cruise missile had hit Hangar C at Longtian Air Base in Fujian Province, destroying 6 J-20 stealth fighters still on standby. Just 27 seconds later, a tungsten rod fired from the USS Zumwalt's electromagnetic railgun pierced the underground command bunker of the same facility, not with an explosion, but with kinetic force so intense it caused the structure to collapse inward like a deflated lung. On Hainan Island, a satellite uplink station, a critical node for China's battlefield coordination, suddenly went dark, its signal vanishing from U.S. satellite monitors in a blink. Fires raged across multiple fuel depots. 2 hardened command centers were reduced to scorched concrete shells. In total, 37 Chinese aircraft, J-20s, J-16s, and JH-7s, were either destroyed or rendered inoperable. At least 400 military personnel were confirmed killed, injured, or left stranded in cut-off bases with no working communication links. The Chinese Southern Theater Command, once coordinating a bold, multi-layered assault, had gone radio silent. One trapped Chinese colonel managed to send a final encrypted message before blackout. They see everything. We are blind. The message summed up what had just happened. China had launched the first strike, but the US had ended it. The shockwaves of the US retaliation rippled across the globe. In Tokyo, Japan immediately raised its self-defense forces to the highest alert level, activating missile batteries in Okinawa. In Seoul, South Korea scrambled F-35 squadrons and deployed Patriot missile interceptors along its southern coastline. Australia dispatched 2 guided missile destroyers to reinforce the US 7th Fleet operating in the Western Pacific. Taiwan, though silent in public, activated every runway, radar array, and air defense system across the island. At NATO headquarters in Brussels, an emergency session was convened. The Secretary-General addressed member nations, calling the US-China exchange the most serious military confrontation between nuclear powers in the 21st century. European defense systems were elevated to DEFCON 3 equivalents, while cyber defense units in Germany, France, and the United Kingdom began scanning for signs of retaliatory cyber attacks. Meanwhile, in the Arctic, Russia responded with silent intensity. 3 of its ballistic missile submarines left port in Vladivostok and slipped into open waters. No statements were issued, but the signal was unmistakable. Moscow was watching. Markets reeled. Oil surged past $120 a barrel. Gold prices soared. Commercial airlines rerouted around the South China Sea. For the first time in decades, the world held its breath, watching and waiting to see if war had just begun. Inside Beijing, confusion reigned. While state-controlled media released carefully edited footage of routine naval drills and denied any conflict with the United States, internal communications painted a very different picture. Senior Chinese military officials were in disarray, desperately trying to assess the scale of the damage, locate surviving assets, and formulate a response that wouldn't escalate into full-scale regional war. At 10 a.m. Beijing time, China's foreign ministry summoned the U.S. ambassador, formally accusing Washington of a disproportionate and destabilizing act of aggression. But behind closed doors, Chinese generals weren't pointing fingers at the Americans. They were directing their fury inward. The country's command structure had fractured, bases had gone silent. Surveillance systems were offline. Chain of command communications were broken. And no one could confirm how much of the Southern Theater Command was still operational. While leaders scrambled for answers, the Chinese public began to catch glimpses of reality through leaked videos and local witness footage showing plumes of smoke rising from military installations. Panic spread across social media before censors could react. Beijing found itself cornered, needing to appear strong to its people and the world, but too blind and disoriented to strike back. The ambush they orchestrated had boomeranged, exposing just how vulnerable their systems truly were. As the smoke cleared and the missiles ceased flying, a chilling question gripped the world. Was this the spark that could ignite a global war? At the Pentagon, senior U.S. defense officials gathered around real-time satellite feeds. The images were sobering: burning air bases, silenced radar stations, and obliterated fuel depots along China's southern coast. One senior commander leaned forward and said just 6 words: "We need to control the narrative." Markets around the globe were already in turmoil. Oil prices surged past $120 a barrel. Airline routes shifted overnight. Tech stocks plunged and gold soared as investors sought safety. In American living rooms, millions, many of them veterans, watched the news scroll in silence, their expressions frozen. It had been decades since the world came this close to the edge. But this wasn't a world war. It was a warning shot, a dress rehearsal for the conflicts of tomorrow. In under 1 hour, the world had witnessed how modern warfare is no longer measured in days or weeks, but in milliseconds, data packets, and autonomous decisions. China's attack was silent and sophisticated, but America's response was faster, deadlier, and coordinated to perfection. And while the battlefield had gone quiet, the consequences were only just beginning.